right, so the first question we asked was a while back. Harry mentioned that the Eagles were better off this year than last. With that being said, do you agree with that sentiment? And if you do, like, what do you think about the other three teams? Are they better off this year than they were last year?
The Eagles are definitely better off this year simply because of, well, two things. One, you've got the removal of Chip, and I think system is just never going to work, especially if you add a new quarterback. Imagine what that'll look like with Mariota, his own guy. So I'm definitely better off without Chip. And then you have the franchise quarterback, which you didn't have before.
Right.
So that's huge to be able to build off that. Now, you do have a blueprint of what can work. You also have a blueprint in Indy right now of what doesn't work if you don't build around him. But think about all the other teams that are in the perceived bottom tier, like the Eagles, based on record. The one thing that stands out outside of Cleveland, outside of Chicago, LA, even with Goff, is you've got something secure here in Wentz. Right. We know we've got a franchise quarterback. LA doesn't know what they have in Goff. Right. Cleveland, they still need to get a kid. Cutler's on his way out in Chicago. Jacksonville has Blake Bortles, but still a lot of the numbers come from being behind so much. So I love what I have here in Carson Wentz. I didn't have that last year. The Sixers are definitely better off, and Joel Embiid is proof positive. Ersan Ilyasova is such a key addition, not only that they were able to go out and bring him in a trade, but also most likely that he'll stick around.
Right.
And he's been playing so well, the true 4 next to a 5. Ben Simmons, it's just a matter of time before he comes. So they're better off, even from a win-loss perspective, it may be negligible, but the talent and the product, even if it's just Embiid, they're better off. Flyers are an interesting story. I think you can look at the arrival of Konechny and Provorov infused with an already young team with some good leadership on there and say they're better off. We know that the goalie situation, that's why I say it's a little strange, because you'd like to have Mason as your starter, Neuwirth as a really good backup, but we saw what happened, man.
Yeah.
When Neuwirth leaves and he's injured, it's just Mason's squad. It opens something up. So I don't know if that goes back to normal now or if Mason's kind of played his way out of looking behind him. But you based off last year's playoff run, making it to the playoffs, that magic that they had at the end of the season, and you didn't have that slow start this year. So I think that you can look at it and kind of cheat where we are in the season and say, yeah, the Flyers are better off now than they were last year. I have no idea about the Phillies.
Yeah,
I don't,
It's tough.
You've got so many young guys that you thought were going to play a little bit better, and you don't know if that means they're not going to move up, if that means they're going to be moved back.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of movement, I feel, in this roster, and if it's not the obvious of Franco or Nola, I don't know right now, and I don't think we will know. I think this will be one of those things where you look at the end of the year and say, all right, last 2 years, what do you have?
Yeah. All right. Question 2 is, are you afraid that Howie and the front office won't recognize what they have in Wentz? I'm not a big fan of Howie's. You think that they won't recognize what they have and use the ability to build around him? And is it just going to be like a wasted Wentz era, basically, because they're just going to continue to try to put players around him and it's just never going to work?
I hope not. I think Joe Douglas and Andy Weidel here, to a lesser extent, give him some help that he hasn't had before. And that's not to say that they haven't brought somebody in and said, hey, let's listen. But this whole thing has been fragmented the last 3 years with Chip here. And it's not to put it all on Chip, but when you have a relationship where Howie and Chip, the two main guys who should be working together, are not when it comes to scouting, when it comes to drafting, when it comes to bringing in players in free agency, one guy is talent, the other guy is, okay, just make the money happen. There's no synergy. Then there's no real blueprint to fixing it.
Right.
So I think from the step right now that we can look at that's concrete is that they brought somebody like Joe Douglas in. And Howie has really two options. He can continue to ignore somebody and go about it his own way, which hasn't worked a lot.
No.
More so than not, it hasn't worked. Or he can listen to the guy that's there. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt in this offseason and say Joe Douglas is fresh, Andy Weidel is here as well, and they should be able to make this work. I have all the faith in the world in Joe Douglas. He comes from a proven organization.
Of course.
But I agree with you. Howie needs to listen. That's the big thing. I think he will.
All right, well, the last one here for this one is, what is it about Doug Peterson that makes you think he's the right guy going forward? Or what is it that has you a little bit reserved that he might not be the right guy?
What has me reserved are things, feel and touch decision making in the game that has nothing to do with the talent.
Right.
So you can look at a play call and say, okay, you got a better receiver, you got a better lineman, you got a better running back, that may work. You can look at going for it on fourth down. You can look at clock management. You can look at choosing to use a quarterback 5 plays after he got a head injury. Certain decisions that are lacking feel for the game, that's a major concern. And I don't know if it's something that he'll learn right away. So I'm willing to be patient, but that doesn't mean that he's going to fix it all in one offseason. It may take 3 or 4 off seasons.
Right.
What I do like is he has an immediate connection with the players.
Right.
And I know that it's
You
a
just
complete
heard,
contrast. Right. It's a difference than Chip, but everything's different than Chip. I like his connection with the players, and I think that's something that can buy him some time, some patience. And
All right, to the Sixers. So now that all 3 big men are back and healthy, what do you think, what do you believe is the solution to the logjam that they have?
you have to trade Okafor, you have to trade Noel. You can't risk losing Noel because he's going to walk at the end of the year. The Sixers have enough money to pay Noel, but the reality is that it doesn't serve them purpose, anything good, to bring him back on a new deal when you already know you have a logjam. So he's a restricted free agent. Some team's going to sign him if you don't move him, which is clearly hurting his value, that alone. But you have to move him. You have to move Okafor. You can't start the 2017-2018 season, which will be next year, with a healthy Ben, a healthy Embiid, Dario, most likely Ersan back, the addition of a couple of draft picks, maybe a free agent, and have both of those bigs on there. Right now, Dario Saric's development and playing time is being hurt because the team is trying to force feed 2 bigs together on the floor. If there's anything Ersan has shown us, it's that a stretch 4 works better with Embiid than one of these 5.
Yeah.
So I move Okafor, I move Noel, and I don't think twice about it.
Nice. All right, so with that being said, and you actually just touched on it, with all the assets that they've had in their pocket from what Hinkie gave them and further, how would you use them? Would you take the picks and draft younger guys that develop, or will you take some of them picks and move them for maybe a proven veteran that can help now? How would you take what they have and apply it moving forward?
I think you look at the 3 guys you have in Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Dario right now, and you start to look at how you can build around mainly Ben and Embiid and Dario as a 6th man. So you've got 3 pieces right now, a point guard in Ben, a center in Embiid, and a 6th man in Dario that should be locked in moving forward. Everybody else is expendable. So I look at it like it's wide open. You've got 2 draft picks, your own and the Lakers. You could even swap with the Kings, but I don't even know if they will. Right now, they won't.
Right.
So you've got 2 lottery picks with the Lakers and your own. You also have a ton of cap to bring in contract. So there's really no wrong answer. In fact, if you're the Sixers, you explore moving these picks because that's what the asset is,
right,
to get somebody who's ready-made, to get somebody who ideally is a better player than not, like a top 15, top 20 player.
Like Paul George.
Correct.
Like
now, I don't know if you can get somebody as good as George, but you should be able to get a top shooter, an elite-level shooter. Listen, even if it's getting somebody back like Alan Crabb, who's not an elite player, who's not a top 20 player, but who serves a role here. Explore moving picks for people who can help this team right away. But I'm also looking at the draft. So there's no, you're not going to hurt yourself if you take a 2 and a 3 or a point, like a 0.1, 2, and a 3 in the draft. That's not going to mean that you can't get that same person in the offseason as well.
Right.
So you're kind of doing both.
Is the clock on Brett Brown running right now, or is he buying more time now that Ben is hurt? Is he giving himself another year now?
No.
Because he hasn't had all of his pieces.
What's unfortunate is I agree with the notion that Brett Brown should be given another year. I don't think he will be. I think Brian Colangelo and the team have set this up so that he's the next fall guy for the inability to work the bigs out.
Yeah.
And I really fear that they've set this up so that at the end of the year, Brett will be able to coach Ben Simmons for a little bit, but he'll be looked at as the bad guy, move on from Brett. Colangelo will bring in his own guy, and then magically you'll see maybe the second big who's still here on the team moved, and then it'll be phase 2 of this thing with a new head coach. That's just unfortunately how things work,
Yep.
and I really fear that Brett's going to get the short end of this, which is unfair to Brett Brown because he's kind of sacrificed so much. But at the same time, I think the NBA realizes he has value.
Yeah.
So it's not like Chip where he'll be banished.
Yeah, he'll get something.
He'll get a job, yeah. But this has been a really difficult situation for Brett Brown, man, really.
Yeah. If you were given the chance to be the GM of any one of the 4 teams for one day, and you can go back and change any move in the history of one of those franchises, what team would it be and what move would it be?
Oh my goodness, the history.
History. You could choose any move that you want out of any of the 4 teams. Now, mind you, Anthony broke down each team and what move it would have been, and then ultimately chose the Sixers move.
I have to say, I don't know if this is the move. I don't know if this is the best answer, but I'm going to go with my gut. For some reason, as you were even asking me that question, what this Eagles organization did to Reggie White and how they forced him out to the point in which he found a new home, a new team, then won a Super Bowl, and the talent definitely did not drop. We all watched Reggie White continue to dominate, and knowing how much he meant to the Packers when they won and how we still don't have a Super Bowl. I mean, I can even look at the Eagles and say, okay, Macklin, Deshaun, and Shady, and maybe not even firing Andy Reid, or certain things about paying T.O. and imagine what T.O. and Donovan for the next 5 years after the Super Bowl would be like. But outside of T.O., and I know that they were so close, I just feel like the obvious answer to me would be retain Reggie White, because Allen Iverson and others, they reached their point. I can't sit here and say that firing Hinkie was the worst decision the Sixers ever did. If they can come out with this, he left them so much.
Is Reggie a franchise-altering
I believe
decision
so.
if he stays here?
I believe so.
Because that's how others have prefaced their answers. What would have altered the path of the franchise had that move been made or not been made?
Think about what we would be here in Philadelphia, the conversations of the Eagles on a day-to-day basis if we had just one Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And we've had
everything.
we've had championships with the Sixers. We've had a championship recently, not too recent, but recently with the Phillies. We've seen success with the Flyers.
40 years ago, they're still talking about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It still factors in, and that's what separates those 3 teams from the Eagles, and I think that's why we spend so much more time beyond just being NFL fans, is we want that Super Bowl. So, yeah, if I were to go back, that would be the obvious one that jumps out to me, but there's so many good ones, man. I mean, you can look at people that may have left. I would love to see Brian Dawkins not go to Denver, but I don't know if that means Dawkins wins a Super Bowl here. I feel like T.O. stays, they've got a shot at winning a Super Bowl. I feel like
100%.
Reggie White stays, they win a Super Bowl.
Right.
So, yeah, I'd have to look at that.
And said draft Paul Pierce. What do you think of that?
Oh, man, that is amazing. Yeah, Larry Hughes, that whole draft right there.
Because that alters the Sixers franchise there. You get those 2 guys.
I agree.
And Paul Pierce.
That's a good number 2 for me. I don't know what that looks like. I really don't know what that looks like. But now here's another one. Think about this. Think about what either Joel Embiid. Now here's the thing. You won't get Kristaps, so put that aside. But think about if you don't draft Michael Carter-Williams and instead you draft Giannis, the Greek Freak. And I know a couple teams missed on him. But if you were able to pair Giannis with Embiid, because we know in hindsight that even if they drafted Giannis, that wouldn't stop the tank. They'd still be tanking.
Right.
You'd still have the chance to draft Embiid. If you were to just switch that, just say, okay, no Michael Carter-Williams, take Giannis. Now you've got the Greek Freak, you've got Embiid and Simmons.
Yeah, but see, was he thought of to the point where he's at now?
No.
When he was coming out in the draft?
He wasn't thought of.
It's all hindsight, as the NBA draft always is.
That's the crapshoot with these drafts.
Yeah.
But no, I got Reggie, man.
Nice.